The First Amendment does not immunize you from the consequences of your speech. And here's a simple illustration. You want to see how true this is? Go into your boss and say, go screw yourself. And you will suddenly discover that you are not protected from the consequences, because you can't be prosecuted for that. It is not a crime in America to insult your boss. But if you say that, you will in all likelihood be fired on the spot. Likewise, we are seeing in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, we've seen vicious leftists celebrating. We've seen Democrats. We've seen left-wing activists. We've seen, tragically, teachers in elementary schools and high schools and universities celebrating this. And more than a few of them have lost their jobs as a consequence. I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing to say, you know what, if you're cheering on the murder of an American citizen, of a father and husband, simply because you disagree with his speech, you shouldn't be teaching 5-year-olds. You're not demonstrating character appropriate. That's a perfectly legitimate consequence for espousing vile, hateful, violent sentiments. But that even that is not prosecutable as a crime.
All right, guys, a big Tuesday full of things happening, and we've got it all covered. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, who is a brilliant lawyer, and Senator Eric Schmitt, also a brilliant lawyer and former attorney general, are both here. And what a day to have both of them, because there's a lot happening. Kash Patel, the FBI director, is on Capitol Hill today. Charlie Kirk's assassin is in court today. The Luigi Mangione guy, the guy that killed the United Health CEO, he's also in court today. A lot happening, and I want to break it all down to you. And by the way, President Trump suing the New York Times for $15 billion for a whole host of misdeeds over the years. And the complaint's like 85 pages. I posted it on my X account if you want to see it. He said a lot yesterday. By the way, this morning he took off for the UK. He'll be over there for a few days. And the funny thing is, the media had already decried, there'll be no press because Jeffrey Epstein, they don't want to talk about it because, in case you hadn't heard, Peter Mandelson, who formerly was the ambassador from the UK to the US, apparently had a lot of ongoing texts, and Keir Starmer, the prime minister, has recalled him already. So the thought was, well, neither of them wants to talk about Epstein. Well, you haven't met Donald Trump, my friends, because they released a 3-day schedule from the time he left this morning until he returns on Thursday night. And guess what's on that schedule? A press conference. They wanted to make it very clear, we're going to talk. And they got a lot that they're probably going to break down. But this is going to be a big trip for the president. He'll return Thursday night, then, obviously be home for a couple of days and go off and see Charlie, send Charlie Kirk off. With an amazing tribute that we can expect to see in Arizona. And I just want to tell you guys right now, we will go live for that. We will be live. If you want to subscribe, we'll have that here on the channel for you. I'll come on and talk. And who knows? I think we haven't really thought it through yet, but we will have coverage of that funeral and that tribute to Charlie. The president was asked yesterday about the role of social media in all of this. Take a look at what he had to say.
The Utah governor said that social media is a cancer and more people should log off and take some time away.
Well, it's not a cancer in all respects. In some respects, it's great. But there are segments, there are deep, dark holes that are cancerous after living. Beyond cancer, they're death.
He's absolutely right. I don't think that we can, everyone wants the media and social media have sort of gone under the radar in this whole discussion. They take people to dark places, to places that, and the algorithms are well known that that's what they want to do. I'm going to talk about this. And I have another newsletter out today at charlesspicer.com. I'm making it free. The last one on Charlie Cook I made free. And this one I'm making free because I really want people to know about my friend Charlie, which is what the last one was. So please take a listen and take a look and read it. Share it if you can. But the one today is about this Bothsidesism crap. And that's what it is. It's crap that the media and the left and frankly, the social media companies all want to downplay this because they know they're complicit. They're part of the problem. And the president was asked about this message of nonviolence from Utah's governor, Spencer Cox. And this is what he had to say.
What do you make of his overall message of nonviolence? Well, I agree with it. I agree 100%. But Most of the violence is on the left.
He's right. Now, I know the left doesn't want to hear that it's not fair, that there's both sides. Survey after survey show that's not true. For the last 10 years, think about this kid. I noted this. For 10 years, all you've heard on the left is that we are an existential threat to democracy. That's what you've heard. You wonder why this stuff is happening. Social media taking you to dark places, the media canceling people on the left, college campuses snuffing out voices. J.D. Vance yesterday did a brilliant job of hosting the Charlie Kirk show. And he took head on this notion of everyone calling for unity. Take a listen to it. And I know it may be difficult for people on the left to hear. I get it. I'm sorry that it's tough. But sometimes the truth hurts. And this is the truth. Listen.
There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies about what Charlie Kirk said in order to excuse his murder. There is no unity with someone who harasses an innocent family the day after the father of that family lost a dear friend. There is no unity with the people who celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination. And there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay the salaries of these terrorist sympathizers, who argue that Charlie Kirk, a loving husband and father, deserved a shot to the neck because he spoke words with which they disagree. Did you know that the George Soros Open Society Foundation and the Ford Foundation, the groups who funded that disgusting article justifying Charlie's death, do you know they benefit from generous tax treatment? They are literally subsidized by you and me, the American taxpayer. And how do they reward us? By setting fire to the house built by the American family over 250 years. I am desperate for our country to be united in condemnation of the actions and the ideas that killed my friend. I want it so badly that I will tell you a difficult truth. We can only have it with people who acknowledge that political violence is unacceptable, and when we work to dismantle the institutions that promote violence and terrorism in our own country.
Listen to that. Take it in. The reason I brought up that Luigi Mangione was in court today isn't just some one-off. It's that the same thing happened when that CEO of United Healthcare was killed. It was deemed acceptable. He's doing a bad thing, don't you know? He deserves to die. His family deserves it, to go without a father and a husband. This is the left. That's what J.D. Vance is talking about. For so many people on the left, they think that this is acceptable. It's okay to just cancel people. It's okay to take them out because it's in pursuit of what they deem the greater good. So when the left says that things are equal, that both sides do it, they don't. The right doesn't accept this. Think about the response to this. These amazing, prayerful tributes. The poise and dignity, courage and faith that Erica Kirk talked about the other night. She didn't call for revenge. She called for action. Go out there, mobilize, do something, carry on Charlie's legacy. When the left gets upset, they vandalize. They destroy. They commit acts of violence. Those are facts. Uncomfortable facts, but facts. And the left and the media excuse them. They say, well, you know, this is based on years of oppression and repression, and this is why they do it. They excuse it. They condone it. You don't hear that from our side now. Peacefully gathering outside of Turning Point USA at the Kennedy Center, what's likely to be an amazing tribute this weekend in Arizona. It is different. It's not the same. And I get why they want to make it that way. I get it. I'd be embarrassed too if that's how my side reacted. But again, think about what I said earlier. The reason I bring up Luigi Mangione is to remind you that this is a constant theme on the left. Violence is okay. Kill your opponent if you have to, if it's in pursuit of a greater good or greater cause. And none of those folks on the left called any of that out. They never said, you know what, I'll stand with you if you come to a college campus. because we should hear both sides. They only now have this both sidesism because they know that their side is complicit in all of this. Now, I have a longtime friend who left Washington, D.C. in pursuit of a career in journalism. Her name is Rae Harmony. She's a really good friend of our former guest, Jack Pacific. Benny wanted to be a journalist. She started in radio and worked all over. This was her dream. She loved this stuff. And she went out to a ABC station in Illinois. I want to play you the tribute that she played to Charlie Kirk the other night on her program. Take a look.
Much for tuning into Marketplace today. So I want to talk about something for a minute, and it is heavy, so please bear with me. I want you to know that it's okay if you feel sadness. It's okay if you're grieving. 2 days ago, I lost a mentor, my first boss, the first person who made me believe in myself, that encouraged me to chase this dream that you're watching right now. Charlie Kirk. There's a lot going on in our world right now, in our country, but I want to say one thing. Lean on your neighbors. Speak up for what you believe in. I don't care what it is. I want to share with you one of my favorite sayings that Charlie would always tell us at the office. He would yell it from the mountaintops, so please listen. When conversations stop happening, when individuals become wordless, that's when violence begins. So, if you do one thing today, make it be with passion, with conviction. Stand up for your friends, stand up for your beliefs, and speak loudly, even if your voice shakes. Your words have meaning, your values have purpose. Never forget that. Thank you, CK. You changed my life.
Powerful, right? You know what ABC did? Suspended her. Suspended her. Because she said, I don't care what you think, speak up, be passionate, take care of your friends. You heard it. That's the message. She paid tribute to a friend and a mentor. And ABC in Illinois suspended her. And then Rae Harmony said, no, I quit. Do you know how difficult that is for somebody? Their livelihood, their dream? But in the same way that Charlie Kirk went out there every day and fought for what he believed in, she did it in her simple way too. Shame on you, ABC out there in Illinois. That wasn't political. You are part of the problem. You. The next time you hear about unity in both sides, remember what that ABC station did to silence that voice. We've got a great show coming your way. Senator Ted Cruz is going to talk to us right now about what's happening. And then Senator Eric Schmitt, another great attorney and senator and champion of the right, is going to join us. Tom Homan will be here tomorrow. Big show headed your way, obviously, so thank you for being here. Before I get to Senator Cruz, last night I had the opportunity to go out and go to a great Maha event. Senator Bobby Kennedy was there. Russell Brand was there. Dr. Oz was there. Dr. Robert Malone was there. Great discussion about the challenges in Maha, and made me so proud to remember that we've got a great Maha sponsor, our buddies at Masa Chips, because this is what this is all about. We keep hearing more and more companies talking about getting rid of stuff that's bad for us. Processed foods, seed oils, dyes. And this is the beautiful thing. I'm a snacker and I want something healthy. And everything now used to be cooked in tallow. Beef tallow is now cooked in seed oils. And that was how it was supposed to be forever. And suddenly, because big food and processed food changed all that, that's not what we have now. With Masa Chips, you get an amazing tasting chip. And by the way, these are the original ones, and they're back in stock. They keep going out. The blue ones I think are great. I'm a big fan of the lime. There's habanero. There's a whole bunch. I love the variety pack. You're going to want to do that. But apparently these have been selling out a bunch. I get an auto shipment, so I don't have to worry about it. But trust me, if you like the originals, Go get them now. But this is great because there's only 3 ingredients: corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed tallow in these Masa chips. And they are great for chips, just snacking. They're great for if you're a scooper because you like salsa or guac or whatever it is. They're loved by thousands and thousands, endorsed by industry-leading health and nutrition experts. Give them a try. Go to masachips.com/Sean, masachips.com/Sean, SEAN, and use code Sean for 25% off your first order. Go to masachips.com/Sean for your first order. All right, without further ado, I want to bring in the senator from Texas, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz, thanks for being with us. I know this has been a very busy day for you.
Sean, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with this hearing today. Kash Patel, in front of your colleagues, getting grilled. How do you think he did in the hearing and overall in terms of the response to Charlie Kirk's assassination?
Well, I think Kash is doing a terrific job. I think you saw a lot of Democrats, frankly, making fools of themselves. Right before I questioned Kash, Cory Booker was screaming at him. And oddly enough, I mean, it was quite a bit of presidential theater. It's not complicated. Cory Booker wants to run for president. He wants to run as a left-wing Democrat. So screaming at Kash Patel is part of the performance. What was odd is he was angry at Kash Patel, not because he said Kash was failing to do his job, but rather he was angry at him for successfully doing his job. And in particular, for helping secure the border, for locking up human traffickers, for locking up drug traffickers, for going after people that committed horrific acts of violence. And the Democrats today are just unapologetic in their embrace of open borders and their defense of MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. And so there was an awful lot of theater of the anger of Democrats. How dare you lock up these violent criminals and these violent gangs? When it came to Charlie Kirk, I have to say there was also a lot of Democrats posing and saying, well, the first guy you arrested was the wrong guy, which, listen, at the end of the day, the investigation, it took them 33 hours to catch the shooter. I will say what happened last week, the murder, the assassination of Charlie Kirk was horrific. You and I both knew Charlie well. He was a friend. He was an extraordinary person. And this was a political assassination. He was killed by a radical left-wing ideologue because of his free speech, because of what Charlie said. And Charlie was a happy warrior. He went to college campuses and he defended liberty. He defended the Constitution. He defended America. And he took on left-wing radicals and he engaged with them with decency, with respect, with facts, with substance. And he was murdered for that. And what I urged Kash Patel is for the FBI to focus in particular on finding out, number one, anyone else who was involved, who had prior knowledge of the assassination, who aided and abetted it, who gave any material assistance. But number two, what I urged Kash Patel to do is follow the money. Go after the money that is behind these Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots, these anti-Semitic riots on college campuses, these pro-open border riots across the country. These are not happening organically. There is real money that is funding them. And so I urge the FBI and DOJ follow the money. And in particular, Sean, I talked about legislation I've introduced that's called the Stop Funders Act. And the Stop Funders Act, what it would do is add rioting to the list of predicate offenses for RICO. And it would give tools for DOJ and the FBI to go after the people writing the checks, funding this violence. And Director Patel testified to the Judiciary Committee that passing the Stop Funders Act would be very helpful for cutting off the funding behind all this violence.
Senator, you've been in the game a long time. You were a Solicitor General. I mean, you get the legal piece more than most anyone else. Do you think that I feel like what's happened over the last couple of days is we finally have started to fight back on the right and to say, we know that you're funding this. We know where it's coming from. And I feel like the defense of the media has been to say, the media and the left, your colleagues on the left, is to say, no, both sides do it. Both sides do it. Because I actually fear what you're talking about is the real, as Kamala Harris would like to say, the root cause. They know that if we figure out how it's being funded, that's the bigger issue here.
Yes. Well, look, as I pointed out in the hearing, if you look at the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protests on college campuses, I wasn't the only person that noticed that virtually all the tents match. Somebody's writing a check and funding this. And whether it is a combination of Qatar and Iran, foreign nations that want to spread division and violence in our country, or whether it is left-wing billionaires like George Soros writing those checks, we need to investigate them, and anyone that is funding violence should be prosecuted. And you mentioned the legal issues surrounding this, and it can be confusing. As you know, I do a podcast 3 days a week. It's called Verdict with Ted Cruz. And we've got millions of listeners. We're also on over 230 radio stations across the country. In our last podcast, I tried to break down the free speech issues because it can be confusing. So let me briefly explain it here, which is the First Amendment protects your right to speak, even to say horrible things, to say hateful things. If Nazis, if Klansmen want to go on the street and spread their vicious, hateful bile, they have a First Amendment right to do so. What that means is you cannot be criminally prosecuted for your speech. That's a good thing. The First Amendment does not protect you, number one, from being prosecuted for conduct. So if you engage in acts of violence, if you aid and abet acts of violence, if you fund acts of violence, you could most definitely be prosecuted. And number two, the First Amendment does not immunize you from the consequences of your speech. And here's a simple illustration. You want to see how true this is? Go into your boss and say, go screw yourself. And you will suddenly discover that you are not protected from the consequences, because you can't be prosecuted for that. It is not a crime in America to insult your boss. But if you say that, you will in all likelihood be fired on the spot. Likewise, we are seeing in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, we've seen vicious leftists celebrating. We've seen Democrats. We've seen left-wing activists. We've seen, tragically, teachers in elementary schools and high schools and universities celebrating this. And more than a few of them have lost their jobs as a consequence. I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing to say, you know what, if you're cheering on the murder of an American citizen, of a father and husband, simply because you disagree with his speech, you shouldn't be teaching 5-year-olds. You're not demonstrating character appropriate. That's a perfectly legitimate consequence for espousing vile, hateful, violent sentiments. But even that is not prosecutable as a crime.
Well, it's interesting you bring this up. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole but I love what you're saying, because the case of Lisa Cook as the Fed chair, everyone goes, well, she's not been prosecuted of anything. And I go, great. To your point, cause, she has to be removed for cause. He didn't say for conviction, for cause. You go into your boss, to your example, you say something rude or whatever, you harass another employee. That's cause. That doesn't mean that you're guilty of anything, but that gives you cause. But to your point, I was going to ask you about this, and you've touched on it. The Politico this morning in their playbook, and I think largely taking off of what Attorney General Pam Bondi said yesterday, where she's talking about hate speech versus free speech. And they wrote, well, I guess cancel culture's back. And I wrote back, you guys missed the boat. The folks on the right were canceled because they said, I support Donald Trump. I am a conservative. Yeah. I expressed myself. What we're canceling people for is hate speech, saying, I want to kill you, or I celebrate the violent act against another citizen. And those are legally different, correct?
They are. And look, I would avoid the category hate speech, because the left has so weaponized the category hate speech that they say anything they disagree with is hate speech. You know, something I retweeted just a couple of days ago was, they don't kill you because you're a Nazi. They call you a Nazi so they can kill you. And so rather than focusing on hate speech per se, I would focus on, number one, for criminal prosecution, for the FBI, for DOJ, focusing on those committing acts of violence. And that includes aiding and abetting and funding everything surrounding and facilitating that violence. And then in terms of the consequences of speech, I think actually the free market, I think naming and shaming them makes sense. So, for example, the incoming president of the Oxford Union, which pretentiously bills itself as the top debating society in the world, the incoming president is this radical leftist who, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he said, let's effing go. And he did not abbreviate effing. and he was celebrating it and encouraging, let's do more. I have publicly called on him, number one, not to be allowed to take office as president of the Oxford Debate Union. But secondly, he should be expelled. And I'll give you a simple analogy most people would understand. If you're a college student and you go out to the quad and you dress as a Klansman in white robes and you burn a cross and you chant that African-American students should be murdered. By the way, that's not illegal. You can't be criminally prosecuted for that. But you know what? You can be expelled, and you should be expelled. Anyone that is vocally advocating for the murder of their fellow classmates, that absolutely is grounds to expel someone. And those consequences are the free market and the marketplace of ideas operating. Like John Stuart Mill said, the best cure for bad speech is more speech, is naming and shaming and highlighting these vicious and horrible sentiments which leftists believe profoundly.
I believe that these studies and polls show that the left believes that violence is acceptable.
Yes.
But I also believe that leftist politicians have decriminalized a lot of things, which has somewhat encouraged it. When I was a kid, you were a kid, I remember my parents would say, if you do this, you're going to get a criminal record. That was enough to stop me. Now, you won't even be prosecuted. Today, the judge in this Luigi Mangione case for killing the United CEO, healthcare CEO in cold blood, dropped the terrorism charge. Is this another case of us dumbing down and charges, or do you think this was somewhat justified?
You know, I haven't looked at the particular grounds upon which the judge dropped the charge, so I want to be careful rendering a legal opinion on that. What I will say is that was a vicious, cold-blooded murder that was done in front of in a crowded sidewalk, and what was truly repulsive was all the leftists who celebrated it. You've got people getting tattoos of this psycho murderer, who, by the way, I won't say his name because I don't say the names of these vicious murderers. They don't deserve to be celebrated. They deserve to die in a pit, forgotten. But it is amazing to see leftists. Taylor Lorenz, who was a reporter for the Washington Post, talked about the joy, the thrill she felt at seeing this lunatic murder someone in cold blood because he was the CEO of a healthcare company. That is deranged, and it is a consequence of ideology. There's a lot of debate online on what I would call Bothsidesism, which is the left, the media is trying to say, well, both sides engage in violence, both sides engage in rhetoric. And this is something also that I discuss at length in my podcast. There's an element in which Bothsidesism is right, and there's an element in which it's wrong. Here's the element that's right. Both sides should treat each other with respect, with dignity. That's how we should operate as good, moral human beings. I think Republicans should do that. I think Democrats should do that. And so I try to follow that standard, and I encourage people on both sides to do that. Here's where Bothsidesism is wrong. This problem of legitimizing violence is predominantly a problem on the left. It's not exclusively. I'm not saying there's never anyone on the right who engages in violence. But on the left, as you'd noted, there have been polls that show upwards of 50% of liberals think violence against Elon Musk is justified, think violence against Donald Trump is justified. Those are terrifying poll numbers, and they are markedly greater than the numbers on the right. And part of it is when you have Democrats and leftists saying over and over again, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a Nazi, Trump is Hitler. Let's be clear. You may disagree with Donald Trump or you may agree with him, but by no measure is he Adolf Hitler. We do not have concentration camps. He is not exterminating millions of people. Like that is a deranged analysis. And the problem with that analogy is it legitimizes violence. You know, there's a popular philosophy quandary a lot of college students are asked. If you encountered baby Hitler, a little 6-month-old baby before he'd done anything wrong, would you be morally justified in killing baby Hitler? And inevitably, a significant percentage of Americans say yes. If you know Hitler's going to become Adolf Hitler, you're justified killing the baby. Now, I think the answer is no to that scenario, but philosophers from Kant and Mill have gone back and forth a long time on those kinds of questions. Leftists know that a large percentage of Americans think it's okay to kill a baby Hitler. So when you call your opponent, your political opponent, Hitler and a Nazi, you are cheering on effectively this kind of violence. And we need to see more people on the left unequivocally condemn violence and leave the hateful rhetoric behind.
100%. I agree. Thank you for saying that. You've said it better than I have in the last week. And but that's why you went to law school and have done all the great things you have. Senator Ted Cruz, thanks for doing this. And do me a favor, continue to be safe out there. I feel like people like you who have been in the public eye, leading the fight, just be safe. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, you too, Sean, and thank you.
You bet. Great conversation with Senator Cruz. Before I bring in Senator Eric Schmitt, I do want to tell you guys, what a great, I mentioned wellness at the beginning of this, and we talked about last night. I was out doing the whole Maha thing with a group. You guys know I've talked about this forever. Sleep is at the corner of all wellness, and I've been using Beam Stream powder. Here we go. Look at this. Here we go. 3 empty bags of the cinnamon cocoa, and this is the brownie batter one that I've been using this week. But I'm crushing this stuff because Beam Stream powder is so essential to my routine now. I take a scoop every single night, put it in some water, 30 seconds in the microwave. I love this stuff. Some people tell me they love it with milk. That's your call, not mine. Maybe you don't even want to heat it up. When I travel, I just put it in the cup and mix it because it's an amazing tasting drink on its own, but it's got all these natural, reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, melatonin, magnesium, all natural. You fall asleep real quick, you stay asleep, and you wake up rip-roaring ready to go. That's what I love about the stuff. So go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer at 40% off your order. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code word Spicer for 40% off. All right, without further introduction, I want to introduce the senator from Missouri, former attorney general, and the author of a great brand new best-selling book called The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court, Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt. Senator, I know Kash Patel faced your committee today. What do you think about the job that he's done in light of this assassination of Charlie Kirk?
I mean, I think overall, Kash Patel's done a good job. One of the things that we focused on early on during his confirmation was to get more law enforcement agents out of Washington and into the field. So in my hometown of St. Louis, we worked with Kash Patel and the FBI to get the largest infusion of permanent FBI agents per capita in the country. So I think he's very committed to taking on violent crime. You're seeing a lot of these interagency groups in cities as President Trump has provided real leadership, whether it's with the National Guard in D.C., or in Chicago. I mean, I think a commitment of the FBI of getting back in the business of taking on violent crime, as opposed to what the previous administration was doing, which was going after Catholics and parents who show up to school board meetings and President Trump and all of that sort of nonsense. So I think he's moving in the right direction and shifting the focus of the FBI. So, but clearly, they've got a lot of work to do when it comes to not just this most recent terrible example of political violence with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but I think, quite frankly, a very dangerous movement on the left as political violence has become more acceptable. I mean, I don't know another way to put it. You just look at the polling, 25% of very liberal citizens in our country believe it is acceptable to engage in political violence to achieve political means. Compare that to just 3% on very conservative. 3% is too many, but that's a big disparity. So something's happening right now with the ethos on the left, and it's not particularly new, but I think they've entered a new chapter, which the FBI will play a very important role in disrupting.
I'm glad you brought that up because I've been fighting this both sidesism narrative that the media and the left are playing, and they want to sort of go tit for tat. There's an incident of violence on your side, there's an incident of violence on our side. But the point that you're making is important to understand. If one side believes that violence and frankly assassinating somebody is an acceptable outcome to your political differences, you don't, it's not equal on both sides. And when people talk about unity and taking the temperature down, I'm all for it. But I think there has to be an understanding about what the right has been up against. The idea that a force says you can't show up at a public place or a university, or we will come after you violently, is just not the same as the other side.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I look, I want nothing. I'm an American and I want nothing more than unity. However, in order to get there, we have to start telling truths and cutting through the mainstream media, who, by the way, has parroted all these ridiculous and inflammatory talking points for the better part of a decade now, of anybody you don't agree with is a Nazi and a fascist. And oh, by the way, inscribed on the bullet that took out Charlie Kirk was "Catch this fascist." So the reality is, when they call President Trump this existential threat to democracy, these crazed lunatics tried to kill him twice a year ago. So like, this isn't some like white paper where we're, opining about what might happen. It's happening. And this both sidesism is a convenient way, I think, for the left to dismiss the culpability that they have right now in what they're truly advocating for, that there's by any means necessary, you can achieve your political ends, including political violence. And a full quarter, like not an insignificant amount, 1 out of 4 believe that an assassination of a political opponent is okay. And that's not the same thing. That's not the same. So for me, it's free speech, yes. Political violence, no. But we have to start exposing the truth here, which is the nature of what's fueling this on the left.
And so that's the when everyone says to me, we need to take the temperature down in unity, I'm with you on this. This idea of truths, like if you're willing to understand that there is a difference, then I want to have that discussion. But I guess the existential question I'm dealing with right now is, how do we get there? Because when I bring it up, exactly what you said, and frankly, I thought it was more worse than you described. But regardless, it's still more on their side. I don't have an answer, to be blunt with you. You've been an attorney general. You've dealt with, like, what is the way? Like, how do we move forward if one side won't accept those truths that you're speaking of? Then how do we move forward? Because I feel like you're right. The media excuses it and says, "Well, you guys did it too, so it's the same."
Yeah, I think probably to be able to articulate the arc of the story here is an important challenge, I think, now, because when you have somebody like Bill Ayers, who was part of the Weather Underground in the 60s, firebombing and engaged in that kind of violence, it becomes a close advisor to Barack Obama, the most divisive president in my view in modern American history. We really saw the beginning of this kind of radical racialization of everything. And then in 2016, the response to that was the American people were rejecting it, was Hillary Clinton saying, the basket of deplorables. And then you saw an apparatus within the government, including the FBI, trying to spy on Trump and discredit Trump. And then he's the threat to democracy. And then they engage in what they engaged in 2020 to try to get him out of office. And now when he tries to come back, this is, it's a scary time for the country. And the only way we're going to overcome that, I think, is to continue to talk about what America is about. This belief that we have to hold on to, that you can have real disagreements, but those disagreements are settled in the town square and at the ballot box, and that we reject any form of political violence. But let's not be naive. The left doesn't actually believe that. If you're looking at polling, and you're looking at all of these incidents that have happened now, even the ones where, the folks on the other side will say, well, what about this person? What about Josh Shapiro? Well, the truth is that was a Free Palestine radical. So yes, he's a Democrat governor, but you look at the perpetrators here. It's not a both sides thing right now. And the media is going to try to shut that debate down because it's very uncomfortable for them. And it's very uncomfortable for my Democrat colleagues. But I think we have to be courageous in telling the truth. And that's the way we win the argument here, is that most Americans who witnessed that horrific event last Wednesday, where perhaps a generational talent of somebody who went into the institutions that have been captured, higher ed, by this leftist ideology, he went there and he had a microphone and he gave a microphone to somebody else and he debated it. And they were frustrated the fact that this guy was helping turn the tide among young voters. And in a literally like a Greek tragedy, as he's holding a microphone, an assassin shoots him in the throat, taking away his voice and his life. we can't forget that. So I think we just have to be committed to continuing Charlie Kirk's work. And I do think I will tell you, it was very difficult for me to try to explain this to my kids. You know, I have a son and 2 teenage daughters, and trying to talk to them about this. But there is a younger generation, I think, that's seeing all this, and they're internalizing it. And hopefully something can come out of this, which is everybody's committed to America, and we're unafraid to call out the excesses and radicalism of the left.
I was at an event last night, and Bobby Kennedy was there, and Oz was there, and we were having a Maha discussion. And I know this sounds sick and perverse, but the entire time I was sitting around doing like a security threat analysis. Like, I'm like, this is scary. Like, I mean, right? There was no, and I don't want to get into the details of the event because I don't want to get anyone ideas. That's scary. You've been a state attorney general. You're now a United States senator. You're talking about the conversations that you have with your kids. Have you? I mean, I say this like in the like, are you having these thoughts and concerns and discussions about like your own personal security?
I mean, we're all human beings. You know,
right. But that's exactly.
I've certainly been, whether the previous job or my job, I don't shy away from difficult topics, but I don't think that's how you can live your life. Not if you're committed to the country, and that's where I sort of land on it. But this is what terrorism is, you know. You just think about these events that have happened, and you know, that assassination, the result can't be that we retreat. You know, that can't be the result from it. I don't think that's what Charlie Kirk would have wanted.
No.
You know,
but you have a book out right now that's doing very well, by the way, endorsed by J.D. Vance and Don Jr. and the president said great things. And when you wrote the book, you obviously, based on your background, focused on how to beat the left in court. Knowing what we know now in the last 72, 96 hours, whatever it's been, is that where the real fight still is, the more that you've had a time to reflect? Is this like where when we talk about this existential struggle for the heart and soul of where we need to go, is it the courts? Is it the Soros funded prosecutors and like I know that you guys had in St. Louis?
Mm-hmm.
Is it where is it? What do we need to do? How do we step up and honor that legacy of Charlie?
Yeah, that's why I wrote the book, The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court, because that was my experience as Attorney General in a crazy, wild time where I saw, and I've taken that to this job. It was crazy when it was happening, but I saw the full landscape of what the left was doing and capable of, whether it was the lockdown strategy using COVID, forcing vaccine mandates, people would lose their job if they didn't comply. The censorship enterprise we saw under Joe Biden, the DEI struggle sessions, and the ESG indoctrination of our kids. This is all part of their effort to undermine our country, the West. They don't believe in the same things that we believe in. So we better win, and we better fight on every front. And the front that I was fighting on until the cavalry could arrive was in the courts. And the cavalry was President Trump and this movement, the Maha movement, the MAGA movement. That is a real thing. But I do think as it relates to what has happened in the last week, it's also an appreciation for that this is, a struggle for America and whether or not this experiment's going to survive. And at the core of all of it, Sean, is the ability to speak your mind without being killed for it, you know, and that we got to hold on to that. If you know, this country was founded on that kind of principle, and people have fought and died for all of those things over the last 250 years. So anyway, I think that the book was the release was, you know, a few weeks ago, but there's certainly a lot of in light of everything that's happened, there's certainly a lot of insight, I think, to you know, the all the fronts that we're fighting, and Charlie Kirk, I think about him, the censorship fight that we had in Missouri versus Biden. I mean, Charlie Kirk lived that. He was the embodiment of fearlessness, of willing to go in and have tough conversations and try to persuade. And we have to keep doing that.
Last thing I want to ask you is, the assassin that killed Charlie is in court today. You've been an attorney general. What's the play? In other words, if you're the attorney general in Utah right now, I had Will Chamberlain from the Article 3 Project on yesterday, and he said getting to aggravated murder, which is the threshold for the death penalty, might be challenging because there's different wickets that you have to hit to meet that, to prove that that individual was an elected official or a law enforcement, et cetera. Should the attorney general say, I've got you dead to rights, I've got the DNA, I've got your chats, I've got the confessions that you made to your parents and relatives, and I'm doing this? Or should they cut a deal at some point and say, as long as we can put you away for the rest of your life so that he doesn't plead insanity or something? What just put us inside the mind of somebody like you who had been an attorney general. What do you want right now?
Well, I think right now in this initial stage, you want to charge that's sort of rock solid. And then you can continue the investigation. I mean, the investigation's really only a few days old. I don't really know what they have or who he's talked to, or if there's a network that's part. I mean, I don't know any of those things, and maybe all those things are true. Maybe none of those things are true. But I think they're going to have time to explore all those avenues, including, if there's an aggravated element to it that rises to the level of the death penalty, they still have time to amend the charges, and that's probably what they'll do. I've not really seen what the initial charges are. It's hard. The federal prosecutors have on murder cases have more limited jurisdiction. They're typically on murder cases state charges, but my guess is no matter who's involved, they're going to get something that they've got rock solid evidence for right now and continue their investigation and maybe amend later.
Senator Eric Schmitt, thank you for joining us. Congrats on the new book, and continue to fight the fight that you're doing every day. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean. Take care.
You bet. All right. Thanks to Senators Cruz and Schmitt for a great show. Thank you guys for being here. Go to my newsletter today, SeanSpicer.com. I've got a great column on the Bothsidesism. You're going to love it. And also, please go back and read the one on Charlie Kirk if you didn't. SeanSpicer.com. Both of them were there tomorrow. As I mentioned, Tom Homan is scheduled to be with us. We're going to talk about Memphis and the next cities and governors and mayors working with the federal government. That's tomorrow. Thanks for being with us. Continue to share the show. I will see you back here tomorrow. Have a good night. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.